May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be always acceptable to you, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. It's the third week of Advent. I know that because the candle is pink. Pink is the third, and there's number 3 on the front of your bulletin, which is also in a candle. So those are the two signs. Anybody know why the candle's pink? All right. There are many different reasons why, and I'm going to go a particular approach, and that is because on the third Sunday of Advent, we remember Mary and what Mary has done. The gospel lesson today, as you know, is about John and about Jesus. Mary didn't get mentioned, but she did get mentioned in place of our psalm. So instead of a psalm this morning, we had Canticle 15, which is from Luke chapter 1. And it is the Magnificat, or the Song of Mary, and it is what Mary said, or sang, when she met her cousin Elizabeth. And you might be saying, okay, so what? What's with her cousin Elizabeth? Why does she sing? Why does she say this? So to give you a brief historical outlook at this, Mary was minding her own business, doing her own thing. She had been engaged to be married to Joseph, and she was going about the life of what a teenager at that time would be doing. So undoubtedly, she was texting her friends and surfing YouTube and all that good stuff, learning to drive. So she was minding her own business, and Gabriel showed up to her and said, "Greetings, favored one." And she looked at him like, "What, me? I'm just simply minding my own business and playing with a new app I got called TikTok." Anyway, so she was doing her own thing. And then Gabriel came up, surprised her, and said, "You will give birth to a son." And if I were Mary, I would say, "Hey, hold on. I'm engaged, I'm not yet married, and I might be too young to have a child," if you know what I mean. So what do you mean? And he went on to explain that Jesus will be his name, he will be the Messiah, and he is the one that is coming. And then she said these words, "Let it be with me according to your word." Let it be with me. And then Gabriel said, if you're looking for proof, go visit your cousin Elizabeth. Elizabeth is far along in her pregnancy. So then Mary went over to see Elizabeth and saw, in fact, that Elizabeth was pregnant and was showing. They say she was probably 6 months. And then Mary became overjoyed. The Spirit came upon her, and then she said the Magnificat, what we read today. So why is it any big deal that she went to go see her cousin Elizabeth? Why is that a big deal? Elizabeth was beyond the age of having children, and she and her husband had not had any children. And so by Gabriel saying to her, go see Elizabeth. Yeah, you want to prove what I'm saying here? Go take a look. And she went and she saw that she was pregnant. Now, as a matter of interest and of Bible trivia, anybody know who Elizabeth was pregnant with? John, that's right, John the Baptizer. So if Mary and Elizabeth are cousins, Jesus and John are second cousin? I have no idea. But anyway, they're related somehow. We don't know if Mary and Elizabeth are second or third cousins. We don't know. But we know somehow that they're related. And that Mary saw that she was pregnant, and then she said all these wonderful things. One of the things she had said is that God has shown the strength of his arm. God has shown the strength of his arm. And I think these two things that she said have difficulty agreeing with each other. Let it be with me. God has shown the strength of his arm. And I'm going to go a little deeper into this. Do you know the phrase, if it is to be, it is up to me? If it is to be, it is up to me. A phrase similar to it is, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself, right? So if it is to be, it's up to me. Okay? She said that to Gabriel. Let it be with me according to your word. And then God has shown the strength of his arm. That is a phrase that if you run it through the Old Testament and you run it through the Psalms, Have patience for the Lord and wait. The Lord is doing good things. It is this repeating phrase in the Bible about sit back, wait for God. God is doing something amazing. And so we have this phrase of, if it is to be, it's up to me, and then sit back, be patient, and wait for the Lord for him to do his thing. And so what is it as Christians? Are we supposed to work really hard and do all these things? Or are we supposed to sit back and are we supposed to wait for God and for God to do his thing? Which is it? I think for us, in our particular time, our particular place, we can identify with Mary saying, if it is to be, it's up to me. How many of you worked hard to get here today, right? How many of you worked hard so that you can be on Longboat Key? How many of you have said, if it is to be, it's up to me. I'm not going to take things from other people. I'm going to work for myself, and I'm going to earn something. And many of you with your stories have talked just about that, how you came from humble means and how you worked very hard, and now here you are. It's great. So if it is to be, it's up to me. So then, what is this whole thing about the strength of God's arm? What about being patient and waiting for God to do his thing? When my wife and I adopted our 2 girls, we worked very hard. We said, and amongst other things, if this is going to happen, it's up to us. And it's up to us to work with the agencies that we had called upon. It's all the paperwork, everything we had to do, the money that it cost, all of that stuff. If it was going to be, it was completely up to us. And we set apart to make a legal bridge between our country and the small little orphanage in Russia. And we created this legal bridge while we're walking on it to be able to meet in the middle and for us to adopt our girls. If it was going to happen, it was up to us. And it did. The strength of God's arm, though, is shown in how they were able to live their lives. Orphanage children have, many of them have an inability to love others or themselves. Many of them have an inability to attach in love. Yet they're married, they have their kids, and they have broken the cycle of the birth mother taught them. So if it is to be, it's up to us, and it happened. Yet the strength of God's arm is shown in how they love and how they support and how they have commitment. That is not our doing. That is entirely up to God. And so I think that's how we can hold both, if it is to be, it's up to me, and how God can show the strength of his arm. And so for this 3rd week of Advent, I'm asking for you to ponder. Where has God shown you the strength of his arm? Where in your life have you said, if this is going to happen, it's up to me? Where have you seen both of those 2 things happening? For some of you, you are aviators, and if you were to learn to fly and to fly, it had to be up to you. Nobody's going to force you to get in the cockpit. Nobody's going to force you to take lessons. Nobody's going to have you learn all that math and everything else you had to learn. And then you flew. And yet, God also shows the strength of his arm. Because the Air Force, the Navy, those planes don't fly themselves. That takes a tremendous amount of support underneath to lift them up and to move them forward. And so it's both, if it is to be, it's up to me, and it takes the strength of God's arm. For those of you that teach or have taught, you know the magic of preparing a lesson, practicing, putting it forward, and putting everything you have into teaching children and adults. And then the magic happens. Suddenly, the students get it, right? They suddenly have an idea, and then they run with it, and then they write papers on it. And the things that you taught them, that you put through in your lesson plan, suddenly they have come alive with it. And that is you doing everything you can. If it is to be, it's up to me. Nobody else is teaching this class. And then the strength of God's arm when they get it. And then they start to use it in their own lives. What about you that have held the lives of others in your hands? Those of you that have been in operating rooms, those that have been writing prescriptions and following up, that you have actually helped and cared for people. And there is a time in your career when, if it's going to be, it's up to you. All eyes look to you. What is it going to be when they ask their medical professional and you gave them an answer? Yet, the strength of God's arm is shown in how they healed and how they were repaired. One of you has shared with me a story about there was a family that was estranged from each other until one of the family members got sick. And then you were there when the other family members came in, and how they all said they're sorry and they reunited inside of a hospital room. That's the strength of God's arm. God calling them and bringing them all in together. And if it was going to be, it was up to you. That's the combination. How many of you have managed employees? How many of you have had a mission and a board to report to, and you had all of these things you had to get done, and the only way you could get these things done is through somebody else? A whole team or group or a corporation. Then you know the magic. The magic of when you give a vision to a group of employees, and then they get it. And then they take ownership of it. And then they start to implement it across the board. That is both, if it's going to be, it's up to you. And then you pass it along, and the strength of God's arm is shown in how they all seem to pull in together. Some of you moved to Longboat Key without having any other friends or family here. And you have made and established friendships that are like family. You worked very hard to get here. And God has shown the strength of his arm by giving you friendships and giving you deep, lasting relationships. Some that you could never, ever imagine when you were working so hard just to retire. And now you're here. And God has shown the strength of his arm by showing you love, fellowship, and peace and gratitude with friends and with neighbors. On this third Sunday of Advent, where in your life have you said, if it is to be, it is up to me, just like Mary said? And where in your life have you seen the strength of God's arm? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.